Commander Cockins and Captain Foley here to for another Trekyards mission briefing, your Wednesday weekly goodness of Trekyards discussion. We take a ship, station, shuttle, something of the Trek universe, discuss, theorise, have a good natter. You guys enjoy it, and then we theorise, then you guys give us comments and feedback, doing that thing, in the comments down below. But today, Stuart, what are we looking at?
Looking at a ship from Enterprise during the Xindi story arc.
Yep.
We're looking at one of the Xindi ships, the Reptilians to be precise. So the ship was designed by Doug Drexler and colored by Pierre Drolet.
Yes, it was a rebuilt and things. So this is an interesting model, and this is an interesting ship. And again, disclaimer: we with the full documentary episode, most of the shots in this episode are the real 3D models. So get some nice, good detail shots of it. So it's seen like seen it before, sort of thing. But think back, Stuart. When was your first time I remember seeing this real aggressive, kick-ass, because it really kicks Enterprise's ass, ship from Enterprise?
Don't really recall my first thoughts, to be honest. I kind of tuned out during the whole Xindi Enterprise story arc. I remember bits and pieces of it, so I remember seeing the ship and thinking it looked very alien, but I need to go back and watch my Enterprise and really focus on the Xindi arc, because, yeah, that's all I have to say right now.
Nice. I love the Xindi arc, so I remember it quite not fondly because it's a bastard of a ship. Yeah, I think they did a really good job, I thought, with the Xindi ships, overall. And when you've looked at a few of them, we're going to look at a few more of them. But this one is a very organic feeling ship, far more I think than the aquatic or the any other ones. But this actually does, I think, give you a real sense of the species inside of it, of their sort of more scaly, more living occupants. It feels like it could be grown, maybe, possibly. Or
Well,
even,
the ship, I was going to say the ship looks very organic.
yeah.
It reminds me of the edging around those wing parts, reminds me a lot of that ship, or not the ship, the alien that attached itself to the Enterprise to drink the energy off of it, the baby. It's kind of looks like it was related to that species almost.
Yeah, that's a good shout, absolutely. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a bit more Babylon 5 in how alien it is. And it definitely is a nice departure from the style. And like I said, my real thoughts of it are how aggressive it was in the show. But now I've actually looked around the 3D model and zoomed around it in 3D. It's not at all the shape I thought it was. And that rarely happens. You see it in certain angles. This is sort of one of the ones that the big bits, sort of the manta ray sort of front bits, and then the tail, I guess. But this is sort of what you consider it. But when you look at it in 3D, it's not what I was expecting. And it's very thin. It's weird. I think good weird, but weird.
Perfect way to describe it. I do love the color palette. I like the purples and stuff. So, although haven't said manta ray, it's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah,
which doesn't look reptilian at all. You know what I mean?
Well,
it almost looks like it should be an aquatic ship.
I think it's just because it feels scaly to me. The color palette and the way it's textured is very much. I mean, I'm looking at the brighter version. But I mean, almost everything has a scaly feel to me, which I suppose could be, the dried out manta ray. It's in space, being dried out, or whatever. But yeah. I think it's too. Again, we're biased. I'm biased. Whenever you tell me something is something, like, I see it that way, so it's difficult. But it should be bluer if it was aquatic.
Yeah, I disagree.
But it's got a lot of interesting detail and very simple detail. It's sort of. I think we got to see only a couple of rooms, which are very organic-y, very simple. But I mean, how big would you say the ship is from first impression? And is there? It hasn't got warp engines as far as we know. It's got that phasic shift thing. I mean, what is inside this ship? Where's the command center? What's the,
Well, I would think the command center would be that yellow part on top in the middle, just because that's where bridges are in Star Trek, As for ship scaling, I would think it's pretty big based on this. Yeah, at first glance, I would say it's a pretty big ship. But that leads us to our next picture, if you want to go there.
Absolutely.
That takes us to a shot of it beside the NX-01, and it is bigger than the NX-01. Not by much, actually.
Well, I was going to say it looks like much bigger than I thought than the XO1. Obviously, having this massive tail element kind of gives it that extra edge. The actual hull portion is not much bigger, but I mean the feel.
It almost looks like it got stuck. It almost looks like it got stuck coming out of warp with that shape.
It's certainly got a lot more hull than the Enterprise, so that implies a much more troop-based, ship. It's. I mean, we for most other races in Star Trek, we never really get a sense of this is their exploration craft where they're exploring new worlds. No, they're either border ships because they're randomly seeing a alien race. They're the warship of the home world because you visit them, and this is called a warship in the show. So, I mean, I'm sure there are other variations of reptilian ships, but if this is a warship, then the amount of space certainly implies that it's got a lot of personnel, a lot of people to have guns to do horrible things.
Do you think it might have a swarm?
Yes.
No.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think crew complement would definitely be higher than the NX. Now, are all of the Xindi Reptilians, are they all human size, or do you think there's different sized Reptilians per se? Do we know?
Are there even girls? We never saw them. I don't know. Don't know. They're very alien. That was the nice thing about all the Xindi. They're all very different and very alien.
Because I can see it having a lot more troops per se. Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of design-wise, it almost looks like they stole a design from an earlier thing called FASA. Look at that shape. That's the Andor. I'm just sitting here looking at it, and I got the Andor on my desk, and I'm like, damn, that's like the same ship.
So do you love it so much more now, Stuart? It's the alien Andor.
Yeah, it's a nice looking ship, but I don't think it feels Star Trek. Like you said, it's more Babylon 5, more something not Star Trek.
But isn't that cool, though? That they managed to create such a... But it still follows the rules of Star Trek by having the glowing elements that feel like engines, and you've got the bridge areas, things that are distinctly Star Trek in style. And if you remember, one of the coolest things I thought about the Reptilians were their guns. Not only was it interesting design, but it fired a organic, energized clump of matter, which would then, we could either make it fire and then shoot out little bolts, which would then disable you, or it would stick and explode, or burn through your armor. And we know this ship has very similar, because I guess I didn't want to make something too complicated for CG, very similar disruptors. But I don't get the sense it would have photon torpedoes or any sort of torpedoes. I get the sense it might have some organic firing mass, because I almost as if could you I mean, if this, these are meant to be the strongest bar one of the Xindi. You've got the Reptilians and you've got the Aquatics, but that's because they've got big, chunky ships. I almost get the feeling that maybe that those entire side elements are living weapon turrets, and they have the organic matter that regenerates because it's a living being, which then focuses into the front bits and fires organic torpedoes, which then burn through a hull or do things. And wouldn't that be such an incredible weapon to have, to build a ship around almost?
Yeah, well, it does sound very organic with the way you describe the way it shoots. So yeah, I like that idea. Totally.
Yeah.
It's like hurling phlegm balls at you.
Exactly. Deadly, deadly phlegm balls. So the next picture is it in the show fighting the Andori Kamari that we see. And I've been told by Rob, who was VFX supervisor of the show, that this ship was actually very difficult to light. And so this is an entry angle because it's so bright. And it kind of... this ship is a weird one because there's no lights. Normally for Star Trek ships, they have spotlights or flashing blinkies, they call them, or just elements that have self-illumination, which gives it a bit more of a feel. This ship has only got the glowing purple elements, but a glow is not the same as a light, because in Lightwave a glow is a post-production effect. It adds the glow at the end. It doesn't actually light. I think with Radiosity you can make that light a little bit, but you'd want to put another light there. So it's a very bland ship in terms of lighting. So you've got to light it in very certain ways, which sort of speaks to its organic nature, because why would an organic creature put light on itself as opposed to the living
bioluminescence?
But that's the bits that are purple though.
Oh. I know what you're saying.
Yes. But it's an interesting shot, and the Kamari is probably doing quite well.
I just have a quick question about this ship. Like I said, I don't really remember it that much from Enterprise. And I've kind of looked over these pictures. So do those back parts point up, or do they kind of go straight out?
They point up, which is something I never really realised in the show. But that is the perfect question for the next picture, which is a... Did you remember it was the next picture?
No, I didn't actually, but hey, there you go.
This is the next picture. This is the side view of the Xindi Reptilian, and this is when I was also like, huh. It looks like that. What? That doesn't.
Yeah. Does not compute.
No, it's. When we do the full episode, I hope we can speak to the designer and get more information about those 3 animations. I think will really be good for everyone to see, like how it feels in 3D, because it's surprised me already. But what's your take on that? It's weird, isn't it?
It's very odd. Yeah, I would assume that they would have went straight out the back. I think would have looked better, in my opinion. This looks like kind of.
See, I kind of like this as if it's plumage for a tail. And if you think
that's interesting.
And if you're thinking that, presumably, I mean, I would assume that the front purple element is the deflector, because that's where a deflector tends to be. But these bits, also purple, I would assume these. I don't know what they call the transportation mechanism. Let's say subspace anomaly, whatever. I would assume that these are the emitters. These are the antennas that allows it to create a subspace vortex. They create the vortex, and so just like Andrew Probert's rules, you want to have it away from the hull partially so that the field can generate. You don't have to worry about it, because if it was flush with it, then it would hit the part. So it kind of makes sense. It's on its own space. That'd be my interpretation. And if you're a creature, you want to be able to. I mean, our fingers are, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm trying to think biology, but it's too far outside. I'm too 8-brained to think this far.
Well, speaking of that, though, like those 2 other protrusions that go like this at the back, when this thing goes into the vortex, it would be neat if those folded down and that middle long part went straight back when it's moving, and then when it stops, they kind of plume out again.
Yeah. That's cool.
I don't know if it does that or whatever, but that's an addition that I would. Well, I would make that change.
Interesting. Like stretching its wings, and then going back into its shell a little bit when going to warp, or subspace anomaly.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but it's much thinner. I mean, it's a very strange dimensional ship. But I do like the plumage coming out. But one thing that I was saying earlier that I saw a lot of the Reptilian in it, the influence anyway. If you look at the front portion, after the front portion, you've got that. It looks a lot like a a spine. Those sort of bony spine elements, and that's where I really feel like it has that organic reptilian feel. With those anyway.
I still get sea creature out of this. It looks so much like a squid or a manta ray or.
Yeah. It's a very good point.
That's what throws me off. I mean, it's reptilian. I don't see reptilian design in it. I mean, you say the scales occasionally. I can kind of see that, but I think it's got more of a manta ray feel. So.
Interesting.
But let's move on to the next picture. This is a great size comparison done by yourself of the Xindi aquatic, reptilian, and insectoid.
Which is the major 3 that we see and get to enjoy.
And we've done an episode on the aquatic, so check it out if you haven't already.
But that was with a fan model that wasn't very good, so I'm inclined to look at it again, because this is obviously the real ones from the show, and there's so much I was really impressed with this model when I got it. It's a really nice model. And this is actually the size I thought that these ships were, roughly to each other, which is kind of interesting. But in terms of the races, and I usually don't remember the arc very much, but what do you take from this in terms of, I mean, these, especially we just knew how big NX-01 was. I mean, what do you think scale-wise, and how does you think the Reptilian compares to an actual aquatic ship?
Well, I get the feeling that the aquatics are. I don't know if they're necessarily more advanced, but they need more room, that's for sure. As we talked about. I mean, that ship is filled with fluid, which is amazing. And the insectoid ships are very small and like little insectoids buzzing around, annoying you.
Hmm.
So, do they have the same technological level? I don't know.
I don't
I,
believe so. I think the aquatics are meant to be overall the best, but they get involved the least, which is why it was important to get them involved. I don't know who's
hmm.
I assume the reptilians are stronger than insectoids. I think I can only think of one battle that we see them fight against each other, but it was a surprise, so therefore shields might not be up. So it's kind of not the best thing to. But I see when you look at these photos, I mean the designs are so different.
Hmm.
I love that. Like they are very distinct. I mean the insectoid is very much, you know, claws insect. The aquatic
Hmm.
is such a whale, but
Hmm.
really, I mean that's a lovely shape, lovely shape. And so if you look at the difference, I mean manta ray sure, but you can tell the style they were going for in terms of like say
Yeah.
whales. And when you look at it in comparison, I would argue while it is organic enough to say manta ray, it still feels more it doesn't have that same vibe.
Well, I agree. I agree with you 100% there, and definitely the color scheme is more reptilian. Um, as far as kind of like a desert kind of
Yep.
look, you know what I mean? So yeah, I get that when you compare them, but when you just see it
Yep.
by itself, I'd still get that sea creature feel. So
Yeah. And the next picture is a awesome calendar image by Jen DeSalle, I believe. And this is with the next refit, and it looks like a modified or very stylized version of the Reptilian with a bit more the glow really being pushed out there, and you don't get really a sense of scale or
maybe it's
anything.
a bigger version.
Oh yeah,
Maybe it's a bigger version. Maybe it's like the cruiser size, you know, or the refitted ship because it's the refitted NX. So
yeah. I
who
was
knows?
I was just trying to say, you know, I can't really get a sense of scale from this, but possibly.
But looking at this picture again with these colors, it definitely
Mm.
looks more aquatic again.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
kind of blows away everything I just said about the color palette in the last picture.
Well,
So
no, it goes with it. It says that in the wrong color palette looks one thing. You give it the correct color palette, it looks. I think to make this an aquatic, you should soften out the edges a bit, make them less circular and a bit more curvy. That would be my only thing to make it more aquatic-y. Because that color palette is actually kind of nice. It's even more
mhm.
alien, I think. Um, I'm trying to think of what alien race, not Star Trek, it reminds me of, but it's very much more alien. Like the familiar colors of, like, say, the sand, desert. This now
Mhm.
feels more alien to me. Yeah.
Guys, I see what you mean.
Great picture though.
I really like this color palette here.
Mm.
Really impressed with that, especially with that nebula in the background as
Mm.
well.
It's
It's just
pretty.
very beautiful artwork. Yeah.
Yep.
And next picture is a shot from it in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Two shots. Well,
Mm-hmm.
it's one shot, but two
Mm.
ships. So you can really see. It's interesting from the front, actually.
Mm.
Uh,
I think every angle you get a different feel of the ship because now seeing it from the front, from the top, but so far back, it feels way more elongated now, and then the front is completely different as well. Every angle is different. That's why I had such a bad grasp of what it was like because it's just so different.
hmm, yeah. I don't know what else to say about this picture. It's just awesome. They're probably in some kind of battle by the looks of it. Is that it?
Oh,
That's
that
the
yeah.
NX. Yeah.
I think this is where they blow up the NX-01 pretty much. I think this is that big decisive. We're gonna kick your ass. But I think
Spoilers.
I do think the front shot is really awesome though.
Yeah.
It's very different, but yet you can tell that the producers probably said, keep the deflector very familiar. It's like
Very deflectory.
very NX-01/J deflectory. Mm.
Yes.
And the next photo is a fun one that I like this episode a lot. It's when Degra speaks to the Reptilians. It's another sense of scale. We saw it with a lot of the big powers, the big warships. This is it with Degra's little arboreal, I believe. Is that what they called it? Arboreal, arboreal's the furrier guys. What's the other ones? What's the human ones?
don't know. There's the reptilian, exotic, the aquatic, the boreal, and the last one was humanoid. It was primate, wasn't it?
I think so.
Was it? I think it was primate.
That's probably right. That sounds about right. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to looking at this ship because I quite like the design of Degra's ship. But it's so not anything. Like in terms of like you could give that to almost any race and change a couple of things. But I like the design. I like it a lot. But it doesn't scream anything. Or I guess
it could be a probe, for Christ's sakes.
It could be a really fancy torpedo. But I like how much smaller it is. I mean, this does show the races and how they really focus on guns and really want to be something else.
All right, so that leads us on to our next picture, which ironically enough is our last picture and also our first picture. Yes. So that's quite a quandary. That is first picture.
No, it's not. We just started back at the beginning. But anyway, yes.
Anyway, interesting ship in the Star Trek universe. Very alien. This is my final thoughts. You don't have to ask because I know you always ask. Any final thoughts on this ship? So very alien design, which is very cool. It's a nice departure for Star Trek. Usually ships are very regimented in how they're designed, which makes them feel Star Trek. But I mean, aliens would have different design styles and things that look alien to us. So I mean, this really fills that gap as far as that goes. Like you said, it does look Babylon 5-y. It does. It really does. Or like Andromeda or whatever. But
I would even say it could even be a Cylon. If you change some of the texturing, this could totally be a Cylon, like a more organic Cylon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is actually kind of cool. I'd like
so I mean, it's a good. It's a great addition to the Star Trek ship family, and as usual, I need to watch my Enterprise again. I'm watching it again. I haven't got to the Xindi arc. I'll pay more attention this time. Good. Just the first time through it, I was like, oh, I'm tuning out at this point. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm really happy that we've got this ship in 3D. We've got the model to really look at it because, like I said, it was such a big one in that season. You know, the big antagonist ship, and to be able to see it in 3D and take these awesome new pictures and be able to really look at the detail is a great experience, and it's something that we never thought we could do. And to learn about ships that were very rarely seen, it's a really great experience. And to have, as I said a few times, to have my expectations and what I thought of the ship completely changed. It's what we've said multiple times. You get a physical model physical for you. You build your Enterprise C. You love it now. There's a lot of things that when you actually get it and see it properly, you can get a lot of extra appreciation. And it's such a there's some serious creativity that went into this, and it's interesting, and it's simple. It's also boring, but it's also interesting. It is. I think, yeah. And I want to do some interviews with that. I want to do some stuff. But I like it, and I hope you guys like this episode. Bit of a let's just chat sort of episode, I think. But
didn't know much about it, so that's
still
good.
Don't.
That's what mission briefings kind of about. I know, right?
What is the purple stuff?
It's good to come out to mission briefings with more questions than answers, because that's what the mission briefings are about, right? Plus, you guys will fill in all your details that you know about it in the comments, so it helps us out later. So awesome.
Well, hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and tune in next week for another Trekyards mission briefing. Until then, this is Commander Cockens.
And I'm Captain Foley.
And we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.